Raw drizzle, lead-colored clouds, and a concrete wall jutting out of the dreary landscape like a rotten set of dentures. An ordinary grey morning in a Siberian industrial district, except for one fat little butt. Clever of them, running a neon ticker along the chipped top of the wall. Personally, I'd have patched the concrete first, before it came apart in chunks, but rich men have their quirks. I squinted through the sifting drizzle that clung to my face in a nasty film. The ticker burned a steady, icy neon blue, its reflection sharp in the muddy puddles at my feet. Testing some new gadget before the elections, probably. Soon they'd be scrolling the glossy mugs of the latest crop of candidates across it. But right now, it was running something a lot stranger. Object, perimeter zone. 4. Containment efficiency, 94.2%. Classification, Class 3 restricted. Current status, stable. I spat on the cracked asphalt, turned away, and walked on, pulling my head deeper into the greasy collar of my jacket. I had plenty to think about without the neon tricks. As they say, beer and television are great for a man who owns a television and, preferably, some beer. It also helps to have a dry apartment to put them in, and a working fridge, since rumor has it beer is meant to be drunk cold. Out of that whole luxurious list, all I had in my pocket was a draft. I turned the corner and took in the territory spread out ahead. Once a drowsy Soviet factory had smoked and shuffled here. Now it was murky commercial outfits, warehouses, chop shops, and, most importantly for me, a rusted sign advertising a hiring drive for general labourers. The pay, supposedly, was decent for our part of the world, enough for bread and cheap sausage. A black foreign sedan slid past with a quiet, unnatural hiss, hitting me with a wave of damp air and the sharp stink of overheated plastic. My brows drew together. Above the roof of the car, floating in the fog, was a ticker exactly like the one on the wall, duplicating its parameters right over the windshield. Vehicle, sedan, civilian, biomass capacity, 4/5, route interception probability, 1.4%. Some new local oligarch amusing himself? A taxi ad for perverts? I still remembered when they hauled yellow plastic checkers around on their roofs. In some corners of the world, that anachronism was still hanging on. Now they shoved advertising everywhere on buildings, on cars, and now on fences. There used to be exactly one kind of advertising, on fences, that particular reproductive organ responsible for the continuation of life on this planet. Thoughtful youth we've got. Always ready to remind humanity of the importance of procreation. I put my eyes back on the road, took 2 more steps through the squelching puddles, and stopped dead. My lips twisted into a cynical grin, all on their own. No, something was definitely wrong here. Were they shooting a movie? Cyberpunk for the broke? Across the street stood a grey 2-story building of moisture-swollen sand-lime brick, a small grocery, and beside it, a heavy iron door, the checkpoint into yet another industrial zone. An ordinary industrial appendix, if not for the light. A sign glowed above the shop. Only the letters were a different color, a cloying, toxic violet that made my teeth ache just looking at it. Hanging in the air over the threshold were crisp, lazily pulsing lines. Object, resource distribution point. Threat level to biospecimen, low. Fuel availability, ethanol, high. But above the iron checkpoint door, barely 10 meters away, the parameters shifted abruptly to a crimson warning glow, and there were considerably more of them. The air around the door seemed to vibrate, humming with strain. Warning. Critical infrastructure. Object. Biomass filtration and registration point. Threat level. Moderate. Survival chance on unauthorized entry. 12.8%. I froze, stared harder, even rubbed my eyes with a fist, trying to shake the mirage loose. The violet and crimson letters didn't go anywhere. They pulsed lazily in time with my quickening heartbeat. Survival chance barely 13%? Come on. Back in the 90s, they'd threaten you with a filed-down shiv out on the empty lots, and even then the odds were better. I hauled the heavy iron door open, fingers sliding over the cold handle, and stepped inside. A corridor led left into a canteen. I could tell by the dull clatter of forks against cheap cafeteria aluminum, the heavy smell of overfried pollock, and the indistinct hum of voices. Straight ahead, an old Soviet turnstile gleamed drearily through its peeling chrome, and to the right of it squatted a guard booth. A face stared at me out of the window, a woman around 50 with an absurd bouffant. Her expression was, to put it mildly, bewildered, as though she'd just been woken up by a dusty sack to the head. From her open mouth drifted a faint note of stale liquor cut with cheap tobacco. I stepped right up to the fly-specked glass and stated my business flat out. I'm here about the job. Word is you're hiring. She dropped her eyes to the empty desk, then bugged them back up at me like I'd asked to borrow 100 rubles till payday. What? She managed, in a hoarse, smoke-cured voice. About the job, I repeated patiently, the way you'd talk to an idiot. Saw the ad online, I don't have a pass, where do I go? Yeah, the old screw mumbled, freezing up completely, looking somewhere through me. And? I was starting to boil, feeling the sweat break out across my back under the jacket. Do I sign something, or do I go straight to management? What did you want? My mouth actually fell open. I couldn't decide which choice word to open the lesson for the deaf with. But what distracted me most was the crimson garbage unfurling directly above her peroxide-bleached head. The air over the booth sparked with a deathly light. Object, biospecimen number, 4411 civilian. Mental status, suppressed, disoriented. Threat containment efficiency, 0.02%. System attention level, minimal. So not only were they testing some new advertising feature over the whole city, they'd staffed it out of the asylum. Do they beat these people before shift? If so, they'd clearly overdone it. Advertising is a fine thing, but only when the head underneath it can answer simple questions. Holding myself back with the last of my strength from putting a fist through that flimsy glass, I hissed through my teeth. I came to apply for a job, or are you not hiring anyone anymore? Job? She drifted off again, staring at her short, trembling fingers. Looked like the woman had blue screened for good. Something unpleasant and slick turned over inside me. What if all those online ads were part of some moronic experiment too? Stranger things have crawled out of the skulls of capital city marketers. That's how our world works. When well-fed men from Moscow test a new digital toy, they couldn't care less about the surrounding biomass. Later, they'll giggle over the statistics at their presentations, expensive whiskey in hand, and the fact that ordinary people burn their last hours, their strength, their life on it. Who cares? The ones who pay the piper have money coming out of their ears. They can play startup today and drop the whole thing tomorrow, move to the Caribbean, and not give a damn about anyone from under a palm tree. Meanwhile, you stand here like consumable material for somebody's PR campaign. Inside me, disappointment melted instantly into a quiet, concentrated fury. I wanted to do more than step over that damn turnstile. I wanted to break through it using this guard's thick skull as the battering ram. What is going on here? I asked, trying to keep my voice as gentle as possible. Judging by the result, it came out like the growl of a starving wolfhound in a hard frost. She jerked back in fright, recoiling into the depths of the booth. Catching the kettle with her backside, it went over with a crash and jabbed convulsively at some button under the desk. The turnstile clicked dully. A neon blue arrow flared to life on its peeling metal arm, and above it, with a dry electric crackle, another line unfolded in the air. Filtration gate, open. Access mode, authorized, biomass within normal parameters. I curled my lip. What cheap, hackneyed garbage. If you're going to invent the technology of the future, show a little creativity, you bastard. But no, it's always the same. Some poor genius in a garage invents something that could change the world, and then a glutted businessman tries to monetize it sideways. The result is shit. Chamomile-scented shit. But shit. I shoved the cold turnstile with my hip, tossing at the window on the way past. Where do I go on the grounds? Where's reception? There, the guard squeaked, stammering, waving vaguely toward a clouded grease-streaked window that looked onto the interior yard. Across the yard! Door on the right, then up to the second floor. Every bit of my life experience, my spiritual reserves, and what remained of my Siberian composure went in that second into a single effort, not telling that fool exactly what I thought of her ancestry, in the richest possible terms. I stepped out into the yard, and in that same second the crimson ticker over the door behind me began flashing wildly, shifting to a deathly white, and a thin buzzer bored into my ears until the muscles at the base of my skull ached.